Hello and welcome back to a new IELTS Express lesson. Today's lesson will help you answer academic task 1 question that feature more than one graph, multiple charts actually. And actually this is a common question on the IELTS academic task 1 paper, which asks you to write about 2 different charts or graphs or whatever you want to call them. So this tutorial is going to tell you how to write a summary, a step-by-step summary, if you're aiming at band 5 or 5.5. So grab your notepad and let's get started. Okay, first we're going to start with understanding the task, basically what you should be doing in the first 3 to maximum 4 minutes out of those 20 minutes when you get the task. So you should spend about 20 minutes on this task. This is what you have. Let's have a look at the question. The word below, you probably noticed that this serves as a pointer. You don't have to use this one. You don't have to use this in the summary. You have it below because right below the question, you have the visual cue. Since this is a mixed task or a multiple chart task, the summary is going to be a little bit wordy and lengthy, but don't overdo it. Don't write 250 words. That's how many words you have to write if you have to write an essay. You can go somewhere about 170, let's say maximum 180, but remember you shouldn't repeat yourself, or the information you write should be relevant to the task, otherwise you're going to get penalized. And this is a common problem. A lot of people say, oh, okay, so because there is more than one data source, candidate students tend to write about everything, and this causes 2 problems. Now, the first problem is you only have 20 minutes to answer task 1, and you therefore don't have time to write about everything. The second problem is that the question asks you to summarize and report the main features, and therefore you have to pick only a few features and report them. So in other words, if you write about everything, you have not answered the question properly. Okay, so what's the solution? Well, you have to pick 2 of the most obvious features from each graph and to limit yourself to writing about these things and these things only. So don't worry that you're going to leave information out, okay? The examiner will be actually looking for your ability to leave insignificant information out, because this shows that you are actually good at summarizing and you're actually good at only reporting the main features. Okay, so we're going to have a look at this one. But then there's another problem. Okay, I cannot find the main features. And this is basically related to what I have said previously. Yeah, you have to search and to identify for 2 to maximum 3 features in each visual cue. Yeah. And sometimes it's often very difficult for students to decide which features are the most significant, especially when you have a table. To be quite honest, I hate tables. I don't do numbers unless it's about money. And whenever I see numbers, I panic. This one is an easy one. But when you have like a table with multiple rows and columns, I usually panic. So what you should be doing, what's the solution? Well, the first important points should be very visual, right? By that I mean you should be able to identify them without looking at the data, just by looking at the graphs. So you have to look for the extremes, the highs and the lows, major trends, major changes if there are any from the beginning to the end, or any obvious comparisons that can be made between either the 2 graphs or the same graph. Now, remember that the most obvious things, the ones that stand out, are the main features. This is what you want to identify. And actually, the examiners are not trying to trick you and want to tell you, want you to tell them very obvious things about the graph. So don't get too clever and try to find something less obvious. Then there's another problem when we have multiple charts, not grouping information into paragraphs. So it is extremely important that you organize your ideas into paragraphs. Paragraphs should be logical and have one main idea. This falls under the cohesion and coherence criterion. And lots of students fail to do this because they get confused between the multiple pieces of the data in the question and group data from different graphs into one graph, into one paragraph. And this is very difficult to read and difficult to follow, and this is why you're going to lose marks. What's the solution? Don't write about both the graphs in one single paragraph. Yeah, you have to group ideas for each paragraph. One paragraph for one visual cue. Then, another problem, making comparisons, because you have to do this. The question states that you have to make comparisons where relevant. Yeah, it's extremely important that you need to make this where relevant. Okay? So the keyword here is relevant, and this is what tricks many students. Sometimes there will be a relevant comparison to make, but in other questions there will not. So some students see two different graphs and they assume that there must be a comparison, and then they spend a lot of time looking for a comparison and then write about one even if they don't find one. So what's the solution? If you don't notice a very obvious comparison between the two sources of data, then stop looking for one and don't write about one. You should also pay attention that there may be other comparisons to be made between the data in the same graph, not between them. Okay? So, besides the fact that you have to write at least 150 words, these are the main problems that I have identified whenever we have multiple charts. And especially when you have different charts, like you can have any combination, pie chart, bar chart, line graph, pie chart, table with pie charts, multiple pie charts, so on and so forth. However, the other things remain the same. You have to write at least 150 words. Okay? It's also very important for you to read the titles and the headings of each chart. Causes of land degradation by region, and then you have causes of worldwide land degradation. And then the labels. Here you have it pretty and nice in colors, but unfortunately the exam is going to be very dull, black and white. However, if you're taking the paper-based exam, you can scribble, you can doodle, you can highlight, you can do whatever helps you to identify the information more carefully, more easily. Okay? And then it is extremely important for you to identify the relationship between the pie chart and the table, because you have to write about this. So if I have to identify the main, the things that which stand out, I can see that Oceania has 0 here. I can see that Europe has total land degraded, the biggest one. And now I can also see, which is really weird, that Oceania has overgrazing, the biggest one. Okay, so you can identify. You can also see that overcultivation is also the biggest cause of worldwide land degradation, whereas other is the least important. And the other ones, deforestation and overgrazing, are pretty much similar. Okay, so let's get started. Now, this is a structure that I strongly recommend to be used for every question in which you're given not only two different paragraphs, but for every task 1. Introduction, overview, paragraph 1, and paragraph 2. Okay, so let's have a look at the model answer. Of course, the introduction should be a paraphrase of the question. Try as much as possible. And as you can see here, you have to write about both charts. The pie chart, and then the table. This is a 2-sentence introduction because, as I said, there's more data to compare. Okay? If you wanted to upgrade this paragraph a little more, so if you want to have an introduction for band 6 or 7 or even more, you will be normally write 2 sentences, and you should combine them into 1 sentence by using and or while, and this will allow you to actually produce a complex sentence and gain points for grammatical range and accuracy. But since we're talking about band 5, this is all right. Okay. Then we have the overview, which is very important. It's extremely important if you want to get band 5, minimum band 5. You start your overview with overall, and again you try to identify the main trends. Overgrazing, deforestation, and overcultivation are the main causes of land degradation. This was what this person has identified. Okay, and now we're moving to the big picture. Oh yes, you must have an overview of 1 to 2 sentences maximum that report the main details and the most noticeable or important information. Otherwise, you won't get band 5, no matter how good your vocabulary and your grammar is going to be. Let's have a look at paragraph at the first paragraph here. We are going to start with the first visual cue. And here the candidate has decided to start with the pie chart. It's totally fine as long as you don't combine both visual cues in the same paragraph. And as you can see, just by looking here, I can see data, 35%, 30%, 38%, 7%. And I can also see a very pretty word, respectively, with 30% and overcultivation with 28% respectively. Okay, again, this is good for band 5, and I can understand what the candidate is trying to write here. And as you can see, the paragraph is organized based on the biggest, 35, and then compare it to the other second. So it starts with the biggest, 35, 30, 28, and then finishes with the other sector, which is represented by only 7% of the total. Okay, this is the first paragraph. We're moving on to the second, which is about the table. And I write about this. The table shows that. Okay, and I have here 3 sentences in which, again, I can see that the information is supported by data, which is very important if you want to get points for identifying details. The vocabulary is basic, but again, for band 5 is totally all right. And I can also see that even though it's basic, the candidate here has compared. Oceania had the second highest proportion. Yeah, Europe had the biggest proportion. In comparison, North America land degradation was relatively low, and the biggest reason was overcultivation. Again, here, if you wanted to upgrade, I would have replaced biggest with the most significant or important. You can see that this is a band 5 because the vocabulary doesn't go a little bit overboard. And that's it. Yeah, this tutorial was a little bit longer because we had to deal with multiple charts and they're quite tricky. But again, if you follow my advice, trust me, you're going to get there. And if you also practice a lot, I mean, don't just think that if you watch this tutorial and then you go to the exam and you're going to have a multiple chart question, you're going to do it just like that. No, you need to practice until you feel comfortable. Remember, 3 to maximum 4 minutes for planning, 12 minutes for actually writing, and then if my math is okay, 12 plus 3, 6, another 5 minutes. Yeah, another 5 minutes for revising. Or you can even squeeze it a little bit, have it 3 minutes for planning, 15 for actually writing, and 2 minutes for revising. Whatever you do, don't forget the final part, revising, which is the most important. Sometimes you can, I don't know, save your summary and get half of the band because you put a few commas here and there, or you forgot an S in the third form of the verb and you change it. Okay? Thank you very much for watching. I do hope it was clear enough. This lesson was clear enough and you managed to understand exactly how to tackle a multiple chart question in academic writing task 1. If you have found it useful, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Share this lesson with your friends if you have any who are preparing for the IELTS. And make sure you subscribe to my channel. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. And don't forget to practice on your English. Bye bye.